Hello everyone, my name is Doug Bassett. I'm Senior Technical Instructor here at Storman Studios. And one of the classes I really enjoy teaching is Microsoft Azure. I have an AZ-103, which is the Microsoft Azure Administrator course. And one of the components that we talk about this throughout the entire course is security. And one of the things that we may want to secure is traffic that comes in and out of our various virtual networks. So what we want to do is we want to create something that's kind of oddly named. It's a network security group. And a network security group, anytime I think security group, I'm thinking, oh, it's got an access control list and it uses SIDS and it's a security group. And it's not that at all. It's more of it's almost like a firewall policy. So let's go ahead and show you how we can go through and create it. So I'm going to go in and connect into my portal. And inside of the portal, we're going to say that we want to create a new resource. We're going to call this one a network security group. And we have network security group, and this pulls it from our marketplace. And first thing you have to do is you have to tell it what subscription you're going to use it. And I'm going to just use MSDN. This is because it's not for production. And then we'll go in and select our resource group. I'll just use my main resource group. And then we will give it a name, and we want to give it a unique name. So I'm going to call this one the NSG for MARKETING front end. And we're going to put this in US West. So I'm just going to drop it in there because I'm going to assign it to a network that exists in US West. And so it'll go in and make sure that everything's cool. And so we passed our validation. Yay, good thing. And then we're also going to go in and start to create it. So it doesn't take very long to go through and create it. And it will have default rules. Now you have inbound rules and you have outbound rules. Inbound rules are flowing in through the network security group, and then outbound rules are flowing out of the network security group. So let's go ahead and go to the resource and set up some rules. And so this shows me the overview that we have, and it also shows me kind of the default rules that are available for us. Our inbound rules, we have these on very low priorities. Allow VNet inbound, that means virtual network to virtual network. So if I have a couple of networks inside of Azure and I want them to be able to talk to each other, by default, the network security rule will allow that. Now, if that's not something I want to allow, I could go ahead and pull that rule out. We'll also notice that the load balancer inbound is also allowed to communicate inside this, and that's a good thing. And then everything else is explicitly denied. Any other protocol, any other port, we're going to say nope. So unless you happen to be in the same network up in Azure, or you are a load balancer, you're not going to be able to communicate. Well, this R&D that we're going to set up is actually going to allow web pages to come in. So it's going to be requests coming into port 80, which is HTTP, and then requests coming into port 443, which is HTTPS. So I need to modify that. We also need to make it so that the web server can reply back. And let's go ahead and look at the default ones that we have there. These are the outbound security rules. So again, virtual networks to virtual networks. Hey, if you're already in the virtual network, you're allowed to go through and communicate. Then we have internet outbound. Now this is kind of interesting. What it does, it says that any data that is coming from this virtual network flowing out is allowed. So if I have web servers and you come in and I'm trying to talk to you on port 80 or I'm trying to talk to you on port this or port that, by default, that's allowed. But it's not going to be allowed for you to just initiate this from the internet coming in. It's only if something in that network wants to be able to communicate out. So I'm cool with that. So it looks like we are pretty much good to go as far as outbound communications, but we have to fix this inbound communication. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go into my inbound security rules. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a source. So the source is going to be any, so anybody, anywhere, any place, anytime. And we're going to say that the source port range, this is usually an ephemeral port, which means it is a port above 1023, so 1024 and beyond, as well as all the other ports as well. This is a whole 65,000 and some ports. That's going to be allowed, but normally they are going to use ports 1024 and above, but it's going to be, I don't want to have to open up that entire range. So we're just going to leave that as blank. The destination is going to be any of the machines in this network, and we are going to just limit it down to port 80. So we're going to say anything coming into port 80 is going to be allowed. And now HTTP is using the TCP protocol, so we're just going to select TCP. We're not going to do ICMP, UDP, any of that stuff. we have different priorities. The priority is a golf score. The lower the number, if I have conflicting priorities, the one that has the highest priority is going to be processed first. And remember, anytime we're looking at the security rules, as soon as you match a security rule, boom, it's either allowed or denied. And so it's not going to process anything else that's in there. So we'll give it a name. I'm going to call this one HTTPN. We'll say HTTPN, and I can put a description on there, and we will say add. And so it adds that new security rule, and it does have a higher priority, so it's going to be higher in our table. So there, boom, there it is. Now I also want to add another one to allow HTTPS, and that's going to be port 443. So we'll modify this to port 443. Drop down here, and we're going to say HTTPS inbound. Oh, we already have that in there, so I'll just say HTTPS. You have to have these as unique names. And then once I have the network security rule, I would go in and I would apply it to things like network adapters so that they would be able to use this. And the advantage of doing this as a network security rule is that if I have a whole bunch of machines that have a port number that we want them to use, I can create one network security rule and have that apply to all of the virtual machines or appliances or whatever devices I happen to have in that virtual network. And if I need to change it, instead of having to go device to change it, I can just go in here and make the modifications. And that's really one of the best features of Azure. I can go in and I can make changes. They happen really, really quickly, and they can affect all of my resources. Now, that can also be a downside, and that's why we always want to use the principle of least permissions. And if you come into my AZ-103 class, we go through and we talk about role-based access control, things like doing asset locks and making sure that you only have the permissions necessary to do your job. So network security groups, very, very important, also very exam-worthy. And I hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you in class real soon. Have a good one.